Hello guys, this is Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com, and we're here today with episode number 36 in our incredible new tutorial series where you're learning how to think like an engineer using the Arduino Uno R4 Wi-Fi. What I will need you to do is pour yourself a nice tall glass of ice cold coffee. That would be straight up black coffee. Poured over ice, no sugar, no sweeteners, none needed. And as you're pouring your coffee, as always, I want to give a shout out to our friends over at Sunfounder. Sunfounder is actually sponsoring this most excellent series of video lessons. And in this class, we will be using the Elite Explorer Kit. Now, hopefully most of you guys already have your gear, but if you don't, look down in the description. There is a link over to Amazon, and you can hop on over there and pick your kit up. And believe me, your life and my life are going to be a whole lot easier if we are working on identical hardware. But enough of this shameless self-promotion. Let's jump in and talk about what I am going to teach you today. What I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you my solution to the homework assignment that I gave you in lesson number 35. But I must start by asking how many of you were successful. If you were successful, leave a comment down below. I am legend, double chest bump. And if you are not successful, leave a comment down below. I folded up like a cheap Walmart lawn chair. Okay, hopefully most of you guys got this, and really the purpose of this lesson was to get you to become more comfortable and familiar with using arrays in Arduino, and also starting to think through a problem, thinking like an engineer. Okay, this is what I'm trying to do, and this is the strategy I'm going to take, and this is how I put it together in code. Now, I must remind you, the assignment was not to use any canned functions, like there's probably you could find some AVG function or something like that. No, not on my watch. You're to write the code yourself, because then you start thinking critically. Then when really hard problems come along, you have developed your thinking skills and your problem-solving skills on these simpler problems. Okay, enough of all this talking. Let's jump over here and let's jump in. So I'll come over here to my code view. I'll get out of your way and have a little sip of my coffee. And what we want to do is we want to start where we left off last week. Remember, last week we wrote a simple program that would ask the user for how many numbers they had, and then they would input those numbers one at a time. And so then you had an array that would hold the numbers. And so for the sake of this exercise, we're going to think of those numbers as grades. But we're going to start with that code just so that we don't make this lesson too long. So I will need you to go to the most excellent www.toptechboy.com. Once you're there, I need you to use this happy, where is it? This happy little search bar here. Can you see this? Search this site. Okay, you see that? And what I need you to do is search on something like Arduino Uno R4 Wi-Fi lesson number 35. You'll come here, and I've got this handy little snippet of code. You'll click on this little double page icon. That'll copy it to the clipboard. Then we're going to come over here. We're going to select everything on a fresh new bare minimum, Control V to paste. And now I've got the code that we left off with last week. Just to make sure that the universe is in proper working order, let's go ahead and run this just to make sure that it still runs. So it is compiling happily. That's always good news. So that is compiling. It is downloading. And now what we are going to do is we're going to turn on our serial monitor. Now we've got to go ahead and press the button to run the program again. How many grades do you have? I'm going to say 4. And what I'm going to say is I have a 90, I have a 92, I have a 94, and I have a 96, like that. Okay, and you see it's prompting me, please input grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4. Grade 4 is a 96, and boom, there we have it. It gives it, I gave it to the Arduino throws it right back at me. Your grades are 90, 92, 94, 96, and it is ready to go again. I think I'm going to go ahead and put an extra print down here after that last 4. loop just so that I get a little space, a little bit nicer formatting. So I will do a serial.println and go like that. That will print a blank line if I am thinking about this right. And I believe that I am thinking about it right. Okay, so now what do we want to do? How would we average grades? Okay, how would we average grades? Like if I had 4, 5, and 6, how would I average it? It would be 4 plus 5 plus 6 divided by the number of grades, which is 3. So 4 plus 5 plus 6 is 15. Divide by 3, 5. Okay, and 4, 5, and 6, the average is indeed 5. So what we got to do is we got to figure out how are we going to add all those numbers up. Well, the thing that makes it a little bit tricky is you don't know how many numbers they're going to be. So I can't just say, the grades of 1 plus grades of 2 plus grades of 3 plus grades of 4 and then divide by 4, because I don't know how many grades are going to be in the, I don't know how many grades are going to be in the array for a particular user. So what do I do? Well, let's just look at this program real quick to see what it does, and then we'll talk about how to change it to make it average. So we go ahead and we set up our grades array. We create a variable for num grades, the number of grades, and then we've got an index I, an integer I to be used as an index. Then we created this string of my prompt. We turn on our serial monitor. Then what we do is we ask the user to input the number of grades. How do we get input from the user? We ask, we wait, we read. So here we ask, then we wait. How long do we wait? As long as it takes. As long as there's no data coming in, we wait. When we see the person's entered data, then we drop out of this while loop. We input num grades by doing a serial.parseInt. And then what we do is we just start at 0. Why? Because array is the first position in an array has an index of 0. So we have to start counting at 0. And then we go up and keep looping as long as our index is less than num grades. And each time through the loop, we increment the index 1 time. Then what do we do inside of this for loop? We create a prompt. We send the prompt, so we ask, and then we wait, and then we what? We read. We read by doing a serial.parseFloat. We read it into grades of I, and I is the index that we're looping on. So the first time through, I is 0. That's convenient. Next time through, I is 1. So we just go clickety, clickety, click, and we fill up that array. So then at this point, we give the grades back to them by doing another for loop. Okay, by doing another for loop here, what we do is we print out the grades, and then let's see, for I is equal to 0, I is less than num grades, I is I plus 1, serial print line I, and then here, I am not sure what is this silly for loop here for. Let's go ahead and take that out because that one doesn't do anything. And that shouldn't have been there. Okay, so extraneous for loop in there, but we got rid of it. Never fear. So now we have gotten the grades from the user. We have printed the grades back out to the user. And now what we're going to do is we're going to average the grades. And remember, I forgot to say the other part of the assignment was to find the highest grade and the lowest grade. So now what I need to do is I need to find the average. I need to print the average. I need to find the high grade and low grade and print the high grade and low grade. So how would we do this? Well, we want to just step through the array and we want to add all of the numbers together. So this is the way I think of it. I have a bucket, and when I go through the array, I take the number and I add it to the bucket. I go through the number, I go through the loop again. I have another number, I add it to the bucket. I don't throw it into the bucket, I add it to the bucket. Okay, and so let's go ahead and create a for loop that will do that. So what I'm going to say for I, just like before, we want to start at 0 for I equals 0, and then we want to keep looping as long as I is less than num grades, okay, as long as I is less than num grades. And then each time through, we want to say I is equal to I plus 1. So we're going to increment I every time. Now that should be a close. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open my for clause. It automatically closes it for me. So I'm just going to click an enter. And now here between these two curlies, that is going to be my for loop. So if I'm going to create a bucket that I add things through to, I better create that. What should I say? I should better initialize that variable, and I will do that by making it a float. Why? The grades might not be round numbers. The grades might be 98.5, for example. So I'm going to create a float, and that float is going to be the bucket that is going to contain the sum of the grades. So I'm going to float the bucket. And then also, what am I calculating? The flat float. I'm calculating the average, so I better set up that variable up here, AVG. Okay, then also what am I going to find? I'm going to find the high grade. So I'm going to initialize that variable, float high grade equal. I'm going to give it an initial value, and I want to make sure that it would not really be the high grade. So I want to set high grade very, very low. So I'll set it to 0. And then similarly, I will need a float low grade, and I want to set low grade very, very high. And so that would be equal to 100, like that. Okay, and now I think we have our variables initialized. Now we can come back here to our for loop that we already set up. What do I want to do in the for loop? I want to add all the numbers together. Well, where would I put it? I would put it in bucket. But bucket would not be equal to grades of I, grades of I, because then it would just be bucket would be 90, then bucket would be 70, and then bucket would be 60, and then bucket would be 100. No, I don't want to put grades of I into bucket. I want to add grades of I to bucket. So how would I do that? Bucket is equal to bucket, whatever there was before in bucket, plus the new grade, which would be grades of I. Now, when I leave this for loop, what should I have inside of this for loop? When I leave it, I should have the sum of all the numbers. Well, once I have that, after I leave the for loop, after that curly, what do I have? I have the sum of all the grades in bucket. Well, what would the average be? The average would simply be equal to bucket divided by the number of grades. What is the number of grades? We have that. It is num grades, like that. Who are we forgetting? Our friend Mr. Semicolon. Okay, let's one semicolon will suffice. Come up here, semicolon there, and then check up here just for good measure. Yes, I was a good boy up there and did that. Okay, now let's look at that. That looks pretty good. Let's, and then we've got the average is equal to bucket divided by num grades. Now let's go ahead and print that out. Serial.println. And I think last time I was showing you guys how you can kind of concatenate to create a longer print line. And so what do I want to print? The string, your average is colon space. And now that is a string. I want to concatenate that string. I use the plus to concatenate with what? The string value of AVG, like that. Okay, so what does that do? I can't concatenate a string with a float, so I must turn this float into a string, and then that will allow me to concatenate it with my earlier string. All right, let's see if this is going to work. Looking good, coming down. It is downloading. I don't think we're going to get an error, and boom. Okay, how many grades? Let's say 4. Okay, and I'm going to go 90. I'm going to go 92. I'm going to go 94, and I'm going to go 96. So I'm kind of going, even amounts around 93 so that I'm putting in numbers that I know would have an average of 93. So then let's see what happens when I enter on 96, and boom, your average is 93. Look at that. So we're halfway there. We calculated the average. What else did we want to do? We wanted to calculate the high grade and the low grade. So now what we're going to do is, okay, we've done this. We printed it out. Now, just what I was showing you guys, if we want to keep things formatted nicely, you can do a Control-T, and then it kind of indents and lines things up with your, with your open and close curlies, and your indentation really makes it easier to keep track of things. So do a Control-T every once in a while. A little bit of a pro tip there. Okay, now I want to find the high grade and the low grade. Now, I'm not going to do that inside of the for loop above. I'm going to create a new for loop, but in that one for loop, I will find the high grade and I will find the low grade. Okay, so what I am going to do is I am going to come in here. I'll say for, just like before, I equals 0, and then I'll loop as long as I is less than, num grade, okay, and then each time through I is equal to I plus 1. I've explained that several times, so I think you understand how that takes you through the grades. And then the open curly, and now this is our for loop. So what do I want? I want to find the high grade. So the high grade starts at 0, right? Now I'll look one by one, and if the present grade is greater than the present high grade, then high grade becomes the present grade. So what do I want to say? How do I want to say that? I want to say if the grades of I, so I'm stepping through this thing, and if grades of I is greater than high grade, what does that mean? If that is true, it means we have a winner. We have a new high grade. So here what I would say then is high grade becomes equal to grades of I. Why? We have a new winner. Okay, I got to remember those semicolons in here. I don't think anything else is messed up yet. That all looks good. Okay, so we have a new winner. Now, what's the other thing? I got to find the low grade. So if I say if grades of I is less than low grade, then what happens? We have a new loser. And that new loser is going to be low grade is equal to grades of I. So as you go through, you might have different low grade, but when you finish the loop, you will end up with the absolute low grade. So we have all of that. This ends the if statement. This, do you see how I messed up a little bit? Okay, this needs to be here. This is why I love the indent. Okay, so now this is the first if statement clause, and then I need to take this blank space out. Okay, now this closes this if clause, this closes this if clause, and then this closes the for loop. Okay, so I think we are all good as far as our clauses go in our curlies. So now after we leave, not inside the for loop, we wouldn't want to do it here inside the for loop. After you leave the for loop, you want to announce the absolute winner and the absolute loser. Okay, so how would I do that? I would say serial.println, and what would I say? Your high grade is space, and then I concatenate that with the string value of what? High grade. Okay, And then I need to put my semicolon, and I see that I have not been putting my semicolons in there. Hopefully you were yelling at me about that. Okay, now I think I'll just snag this, Control C, and then I'll come down here, Control V, and this time on this one it'll say your low grade is string low grade. Okay, now how many mistakes did you guys see that I made here? I think it looks pretty good. What do you think? Let's try to run this. Hold your breath. Yes. Oh, D died. 4I equals 0. I hate this. I keep putting a comma instead of a semicolon. You might blame me, but in fact, it was one of you did not hold your breath. So this time I need everyone to hold their breath. Oh, yes. Oh, another one. What happened there? For I equals 0, I is less than num grade. Is it num grade or num grades? Okay. That one, I'll take that one. That one was my fault. All right, can't blame you for that one, but it's looking good. It is downloading, and boom. Let's come over to our serial monitor and let's see what happens. How many grades? So let's come in and let's say that I have 4 grades. I'm going to say 90. I'm going to say 92. I'm going to say 94. I'm going to say 96. And boom, look at that. So I have the grades. It says your average is 93. We know that's right. We say that your high grade is 96. Yes, we know that. And then we say that your low grade is 90. Success. Victory, victory. Okay. So if you are grading me, and if you guys are in the Premiere, leave a comment in the live chat. If you are not in the Premiere, pause right now and leave a comment on the video, and I mean leave a comment down in the comment section. And if you are grading me on this, what grade would you give me? Okay, what grade would you give me? You can see that I input the grades. Okay, I input the grades, and when I did this cool little index thing. Please input grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4. I think that's pretty good. And then I say your grades are, and then I say 90, 92, 94, 96. That looks good. The average is right. The high grade is right. The low grade is right. And then to make it look nice, little nice formatting, I put a blank space there. So if you were in charge, what would you give me? Okay, now hopefully most of you guys would have given me 100, but now what I want to show you is I want to show you how I sent many students from the engineering department into the culinary arts department because they were expecting 100 on this, but in fact they would get a 0. Why? Somebody tell me. If someone has a concern, someone tell me. Let's try this again. So I'm going to come here. How many grades do I have? I have 4 grades. And then let's say that I have a 25 as a grade, and I have a 30 as a grade, and I have a 35 as a grade, and I have a 40 as a grade. You know what? I think I really messed up that. Okay, yeah, so no, I did it right. All right, so my grades were 25, 30, 35, and 40. My average is 125. My high grade was a 96. No, the high grade was what, a 40, and the low grade. So I guess what my score on this, the 125 is wrong, the 96 is wrong, and the 25 is right. So I got 1 out of 3 right. So I would have gotten a 33 instead of a 0 on there. Okay, now what happened? And this is what so many students do. They write the code, they test it, they work, and then they put their little Arduino kit away and go to the internet and start watching silly cat videos. They didn't shake their code out, and they didn't really see if it was going to work in all conditions. So somebody tell me in the Premiere, or somebody tell me in the chat below, why did it not work the second time? Okay, let me show you. When I came out here and I said bucket is equal to bucket plus grades of I, it tallies up all of that array, and bucket has the sum of all of those numbers. Then it comes down, it calculates the average, then it finds the high grade, then it finds the low grade, and then what does it do? It comes back up to the void loop and it asks the person, how many grades do you have? And then what does it do? It adds them to the bucket. What is the problem? You didn't empty the bucket. You didn't carry your trash out. You already had a bucket full of numbers when you went through it the second time. But do you see, the insidious thing is it will always work the first time and it will always fail the second time. So what did I need to do? Okay, before I came in here, what did I need to do? I needed to carry my trash out. Bucket, before going into this, bucket is going to be 0. So I will carry my trash out, all right? What else was high grade and low grade? I initialized high grade and low grade up here, but the second time through the loop, it had the high grade and low grade from the first time. So what did I need to do? I needed to reinitialize high grade and low grade. So again, here I will say high grade is equal to 0, the lowest possible, and low grade is equal to 100, the highest possible. And now I've reinitialized those things. So let's try this now. Okay, let's run this. It's looking good, looking good. I think I got all my semicolons in. So now we're going to come in, we're going to come over here. So now I am going to say enter 4 grades. And then what's your first grade? 90, 92, 94. And then I'm going to put in 96. And then let's see what happens. 93, 96, 90. That looks good. But will it work on the second time? So I will say this time 4 grades. And I will say 10, and then 15, and then 20, and then I will say 25, like that. And what do we get? Your average is 17.5, looking good. High grade is 25 and low grade is 10. Okay, guys, man, what I hope you learned today is I hope you thought through this problem on your own. But how many of you guys did not check for a second set of numbers? You could say guilty as charged or say I was one step ahead of you, but leave a comment down below. Did any of you guys forget to check for the second time? And did any of you guys forget to carry your trash out to empty that bucket? Okay, let me know in the comments, or let me know in the live chat if you guys are joining this as a premiere. Because what I see is, I was an engineer, and as a working engineer and as a manager of engineers, what I found is engineers were usually pretty careful about really checking their stuff out and checking their hardware out. But what I found is that programmers tended to just very minimally check their code and then pass their code off to whoever was going to use it. And then when it didn't work or it broke, they would get real mad and angry and like blame the user or whatever, not want to admit there was a problem. So I think there's a culture among software people to not really be very good about shaking their code out. So when I was a teacher, I would always just stay up at night trying to dream of ways that I could break someone's code by doing something unexpected. Like the unexpected thing here today was to switch and run the program, or to do a second set of numbers in the program. And very few students ever thought about that, and very few students ever thought about emptying the bucket. Alrighty then, I hope you guys are having as much fun taking this class as I am making it. I do need to give you a homework assignment. Okay, what have we done so far? I need to come back over here. What have we done so far? We have asked for how many grades. We've then input the grades, then we have reported the grades back, then we've reported the average, the high grade, and the low grade. But what I want you to do for next week is I want you to sort the grades from high to low. So when you print the grades out, don't print them in the order they were entered, but print them in rank order from the highest grade to the lowest grade in order. You have to sort. Now, it's very important. You have to write the code to do the sort. You do not get credit by Googling something and finding someone who has a library or a function that does it for you. You need to go in, you need to think through the problem, and then you need to next week show me that your program will ask for the number of grades, will input the grades, will sort the grades, and then print the sorted list, and then give the average, the high grade, and the low grade. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Okay, guys, as always, I want to give a shout out to you guys who are helping me out over at Patreon. Right now, it is you Patreon guys that are keeping me in the game. I am able to continue to make these classes because of my Patreon supporters. Thank you for that. You can also help me by giving me a thumbs up. Also helps if you leave a comment down below. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. When you do, ring that bell so you'll get notification when future lessons drop. And most importantly, share this video with other people, because the world needs more people thinking like an engineer and fewer people sitting around watching silly cat videos. Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com. I will talk to you guys later.